It's like I'm standing at the bottom rung of a ladder. I see the top, I see where I need to be, but the rungs in between look like they're so far apart that I don't even start, because how am I even going to do this? I don't know the distance between the rungs of a ladder till I get up there. So once I get on the first rung, okay, yeah, well, this wasn't too bad. So let me climb up the next one, keep going. And before I know it, I look down and I look at how far I've come, even though I still maybe have a little bit to go. The fact that I've gotten this far is going to will me to get up to the top of that ladder.
Hello, I am so excited to talk to today's guest, Mariya. She is known as Mariya Climbs on Instagram and on TikTok, and you can find her amazing videos. So her actual bio, which I'm going to read for you guys because it's so top quality, is bouldering baddie who climbs shit, lifts shit, and is very novice but killing it. And I absolutely love all of her amazing stuff and has some really amazing things to share with us today. So without further ado, Mariya, will you tell everyone a little bit about you and about you came on here to chat with us about?
Yeah, of course. My name is Mariya. I am a almost 31-year-old living here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I have just kind of been on a journey of self-discovery. So I am here just to kind of speak to the things that I have always cared about, but also some things that are new that I've recently began to care about. So thank you so much, Lillian, for having me.
Oh my gosh, I genuinely couldn't be more excited. I'd seen obviously some of your videos. One of the really cool things, well, I'm almost 30, so I can relate to the idea that even though we're relatively young, trying new things like climbing feels really scary to me. And I'm so inspired by watching you show your journey of trying this new thing. Because when did you start climbing?
I started climbing in mid-March of this year. So I've only been climbing for about 4.5 months. I've loved/hated every second of it.
Sounds right.
Because it's a tough thing, because when you're climbing, you have to rely on your entire body weight to get you up to the top of the climbing route. And then there's technique, and then some routes are easier than others and things like that. So it's one that's pretty tough, but I love the journey of trying to figure out how to get my big old behind up these boulders, that in the climbing community, they call it sending. So when you complete a route, you send it essentially. So how am I going to get my big behind up here to send these routes and do this thing? Like, what am I going to do? So
for people who maybe haven't had the opportunity to watch your videos, can you describe a little bit about kind of where you climb and what you mean when you say route? Because I know it from watching your videos. I did not know what that was before.
Absolutely. So I climb at this beautiful place called North Mass Boulder. It is a climbing gym that it's in downtown Indianapolis, and it is a wonderful place. One of the reasons why I love this gym is not only because it's so aesthetically pleasing as far as how they configure all the routes and things. They also have a gym on the other side. They have a restaurant in there as well. And then they're constantly doing like some sort of series where they have live music every Wednesday. And in addition to that, they're also very in tune with the community. So they have trans and queer nights. They are for reproductive rights as well. And they also display all of this on their social media. They are very gung-ho about being very inclusive with the community around them and making sure that everybody can come in and climb, no matter who you are, where you're from, how you identify. You can come in and climb it and have a good time with everyone. So I absolutely love that about that gym.
That's amazing.
And then also, so when we say a route, what it means is the way that they've configured the rocks on the boulder. So the things that you hold on to or put your feet on as you're climbing up, those are called the rocks. And then the boulder is the actual big thing that they put the rocks on, that they like drill them into the wall. So it's super safe for everybody. And so at the gym that I'm at, they utilize what's called the rainbow system. And so essentially it moves from red all the way over to black, red being quote unquote the easier routes, the more accessible routes to beginner climbers. And then black is more so for the more advanced climbers who are using more technique and have been climbing probably for a while and who kind of want a challenge as well.
Okay, that's very, very cool. And I want to come back to a couple things you mentioned there, but one in particular is the idea that they create this really safe space for people who maybe need a little bit more of welcome into a space
Mm-hmm.
like that. For our listeners, I'm going to put that information in the episode description of this gym, as well as make sure to tag them in all the stuff. So you should be able to find them and all their social really easily from this episode. But can you talk a little bit about kind of why that is important? If it's something that you feel is important at all spaces, if it's particularly important in climbing, what kind of drew you to a space that prioritize that?
So originally, I didn't know that they were as inclusive as they were. I was just invited by a coworker, badgered actually, to go climbing with her. And at first, I was like, no, 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 no. I eventually, went and I absolutely loved it. And so when you walk into the gym, the first thing to your right is going to be all of these beautifully laid out posters that talk about kind of the events that they're doing, and I think that it's so important for people who are othered in any other space
Mm-hmm.
to know that they have a place to go where they can feel welcome, because in many other spaces people do not feel welcome,
Mm-hmm.
because of whatever identity, skin color, sexual orientation, things like that. And as someone who is queer myself, it just kind of spoke to me, honestly, because that representation and that feeling of a safe space is so important,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a day and age where, even though we've made progress, we still have a
Mm-hmm.
long way to go. And so it's just important for people to see and to know and to feel that they are included, that they are welcome, that they are encouraged to show themselves and be themselves in the most authentic way that they feel comfortable. That's top notch, because
Yeah.
people, get suppressed, or they're told that's weird or you're weird or whatever the case may be, when in reality, it's just that person expressing themselves and navigating who they are, which is such an important, I think, journey in life, So that really, really spoke to me as someone who's also continuously navigating myself and figuring out who I am, because we think we know who we are in our
Mm-hmm.
20s, but life always says, oh, just you wait. I can't speak to just how important that is. It really warmed my heart when I saw it. So I literally that night signed up for a membership, because I was like, okay, this place is top notch.
Yeah, because I think that that's something that when you are someone who is othered, like you said, for whatever reason, and you walk into a space and you have that welcome, that level of safety and relief is something that is so incredibly important and special. And so putting in that little bit of extra effort to make those people feel comfortable can really, really change things.
Absolutely.
It's so cool that you had a friend who invited you to a place and then you sort of found this thing that you resonated with and went, you know what, I loved this and I'm going to stick around. So, do you want to tell a little bit about kind of why you went there in the first place, and what about that first experience and then sort of the following experiences that made you feel like trying this new thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the truth is that I was reeling from a heartbreak.
Mm,
I had recently gotten my heart broken. So one thing that I make sure that I do, because as a child, I was never really given the space to feel my feelings. I was always told, oh, well, you have a roof over your head. You should be fine. You have food in your belly. You have all these
mm-hmm,
like basic provisions. You're good. And I think that ignores that emotions occur, and they're not
mm-hmm,
going to not occur just because you don't want to feel them. And so I spent my large chunk of my 20s suppressing my feelings and pretending like I was okay and pretending like I wasn't sad, until I got into a major depressive episode in about 2016. And so from then on, I vowed to myself to just allow myself to feel my feelings as they come. And if I need to cry, I need to cry. If I'm angry, I'll find a space to be able to healthily express that anger, be it punching my pillow, be it screaming into my pillow, be it
mm-hmm,
writing down my thoughts, things like that. And so after this heartbreak happened, I was like, okay, I'm going to feel my feelings. I'm going to cry. I'm going to be upset, because that's how I'm genuinely feeling. And then I'm going to get up. Right? I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do something about this. I'm not going to sit here and wallow in sadness, because life's not over and I have options. And just because maybe this person doesn't want me in the same way that I want them doesn't mean I am less valuable or less wonderful of a person. It just means that that person wasn't for me and we didn't align for whatever reason. When I finally went climbing, it was difficult. It was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. How am I going to do this? Like, this is really hard. Da, 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 da. It's kind of like a transformative journey, because it's, yes, this thing is really hard, and it's really difficult. But once you get to the top of the boulder after you've climbed the route, even if you don't, just to know your power and to know that you did that, right? Like nobody
Mm-hmm.
else climbed those routes for me. I did that. And so there's
Mm-hmm.
power in knowing my strength, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And it's kind of about the journey for climbing with me because, I don't care if I send every single route that I step on. What matters to me is that I attempted or that I got further than I did the last time. That's really important. And also to know that just because I didn't send this route the first time I did it doesn't mean that I am stupid or that I'm a bad person, right? Or that because I'm imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that I didn't get it the first time. And that's all that it means. And so detaching myself from the idea of trying to be perfect and not feel my feelings and kind of be this robot has really become a strength for me through bouldering. And that's kind of what hooked me onto it because I wanted to keep doing it because I'm like, oh, okay, I fell off. Whatever, I'll get up and do it again. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I fall off on the first couple steps, whatever, that's fine. I'll fall off. And then the next time I'll get a little bit higher, fall off. Next time I'll get a little bit higher and shape up that behavior, which is the behavior analysis part, shape
Mm-hmm.
up that behavior so that I am along the way learning more about myself, my body, and what I can handle. And so that when I finally send it, all the work that I did to get to the top of that route or get to the top of that boulder was worth it because I was shaped myself up to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of all a part of that journey.
There's so many things in that I could talk for a full hour with you about. And we're going to come back to a lot of them. One thing that you mentioned there at the end, I'm very, very curious about, that I'm sure our listeners are as well, the applied behavioral analysis. Can
Mm-hmm.
you explain a little bit more about what that is and why that is sort of a model that you're using here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working in the field of applied behavior analysis as a registered behavior technician or RBT since about 2014. So right out of college when I graduated. So I'm aging myself here. I have always loved the field, and that's why I've stayed in it, got my master's degree in it, and will be like sitting to take the exam to be a board certified behavior analyst or BCBA. And so as I'm doing this, it's one of those things where when you do a thing for work every day, it just never leaves
Mm-hmm.
you. It just never
Mm-hmm.
leaves you, especially in the field of behavior analysis, because behavior is behavior is behavior, right? It
Mm-hmm.
applies to the population that I work with, which is children who have been diagnosed with some form of autism, but it also works with just people because behavior is
Mm-hmm.
behavior. So the same principles that I use to, help to improve the lives of my clients is the same thing I can use for myself, duh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So shaping is one of the things that we use to teach one of our clients how to do something. So if we're teaching a child be how to point at something that they want, maybe we'll start by touching their elbow. And once they tolerate us touching their elbow, we'll reinforce that. And then over time, we'll reinforce the pointing behavior, essentially. So at the
Mm-hmm.
end, they're pointing, right? And so I'm using that same principle of shaping for myself. If a route or if a boulder isn't something that I know that I can readily send the first time, which is fine, I will shape myself up to it. So I'll build up to the terminal goal, which is to get over the top. So I'll go up a little bit, come back down, and then look at it, analyze it, because I analyze all day.
Mm-hmm.
Go up a couple more times, come back down. Go up a couple more times and come back down until I reach the terminal goal of getting to the top there. And then I reinforce myself with a break in water.
Yes, nice. Well, and I think that that's such an incredible thing because first of all, I think that applies to so many things. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
using this incredible example of taking something from one context and bringing it into this other context. And one of the things that I talk about a lot, the idea of reframing failure, because we so often get focused on the result and wanting the result to be what we want that we get
Yes.
lost in the process. And this is such an amazing way to think about each step of the process. Even if you're not sending it, you're still making that progress. And that is going to be incremental to ultimately get you where you want. In this case, very
Yes.
literally and physically.
Yes, exactly.
That's such an incredible kind of way to reframe that and to think that through. How did you start reframing things in that way?
Yeah, so I just had over the course of quarantine with COVID and all the things that happened with that, you had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time to sit to yourself and think about things. And so I one thing that I do for myself is I make all these lofty goals for myself. I'm gonna do
Mm-hmm.
this or save this much money, or I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna do this. I want to move. Like I have all these ideas just kind of floating around in my mind about things that I want to do, places I want to be. And what I was finding was that I wasn't even starting them because the goals seemed so
Mm-hmm.
lofty from where I was standing. It's like I like to think in pictures. It's like I'm standing at the bottom rung of a ladder and I
Mm-hmm.
see the top, I see where I need to be, but the rungs in between look like they're so far apart that I don't even start because how am I even going to do this? And
Mm-hmm.
so through sitting with myself during COVID and continuing to sit with myself, even past that, I learned that, okay, well, I don't know the distance between the rungs of a ladder till I get up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I get up there, get on the first rung, okay, like, well, this wasn't too bad. So let me climb up the next one and then climb up the next one and just kind of keep going in just small increments over time. And before I know it, I look down and I look at how far I've come
Mm-hmm.
versus how far I have to go. And even though I still maybe have a little bit to go, the fact that I've gotten this far is going to will me to get up to the top of that ladder, to the top of
Mm-hmm.
that goal, just by little bits, little habits every single day. And so that's kind of where that mindset came from. And that's one thing that I'm still working on every single
Mm-hmm.
day is still setting those goals for myself, but breaking them down. So if I want to move to this place or whatever, these are the things that I need to do. Okay, how am I going to do those things? And then write out those small little short-term goals that are going to help me meet that final terminal big goal, so that by the time I get to that top goal, I'm like, oh, look how far I came. Like, wow, look at me. We love to see
Yeah.
it.
And I think that brings me to another I hate saying something's brave because I think it's very amazing and I wish more people would do it. That's what I mean by my gut instinct to want to say it's brave. I think social media is so often people posting when they're at that pinnacle. They get to the top of that ladder and they're like, I did it. Look at
Yeah.
me. And they don't post incremental chunks. And I think that's what's so incredible about what you're sharing is you're sharing that process. You're not posting exclusively when you didn't wait till you learned how to climb those hardest black runs. You started posting with one of your videos I think is like your first climb ever, right?
Oh my gosh, Lord, yes, it was. And I was, now that I look back, because I've been climbing for a few months, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was shaking like a stripper. Like, my goodness. But that was literally my first night ever climbing. So that is just kind of my body getting used to, like, girl, what are you doing? What's happening here? And now that I look back on it, if they were to put that same configuration up,
Mm-hmm.
on the boulder, I'd be able to knock that out,
Yeah.
no problem. But I had to get there, gain that confidence, and do it for a while to know that looking back on that, oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
wasn't as hard as it was when I was first doing it, essentially.
Yeah. And I think so. I guess my question is, why did you choose to share that journey? What made you decide to start sharing that part of the journey before you're this special expert at it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think speaking back to what you were talking about on social media about how people love to post, the finished product of something.
Hmm.
They don't often share the journey of what it took to get there, and so it has people thinking that they have to be perfect or that they have to get everything right or do things a certain way, in order to be like or get to where this person is. And so in that way, I think that social media, is detrimental because in everything that we do, we have to work to get there. And so one of my reasons for sharing this was for people who are beginners and may be intimidated by walking into the climbing gym just as I was. I'm like, I know I can't be the only person in the world who looks at all
Hmm.
these people just like climbing up like monkeys. I'm like, I can't be the only one that's like, what, like, how do I even do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, let me, even if no one follows me, right, it's cathartic kind of for myself to just,
Hmm.
see and track my journey. And maybe if anyone is interested, they'll look at and see how I got from point A to point B to point C to point D, and see that they can do that for themselves. So when people reach out and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so intimidating, but you did it, you did a great job, it makes me want to get back into it, that warms
Hmm.
my heart, because absolutely you should get back into it. It's a great exercise, and you're winded by the end of it, but it's really it's a really good journey.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, when I started my climbing journey, and I'm a researcher, so I like to type and look at videos of other people and things like that. What I wasn't seeing was myself, right?
Yeah.
Representation is so important. And I wasn't seeing a lot of Black women who are 250 pounds, right? I was
Hmm.
seeing a lot of skinny white guys or skinny white women climbing. And I'm like, I need for people to understand that it doesn't matter what your size is, what your
Hmm.
race is. If you want to go climb, please go climb. Please go try something new and see, if you like it or not. If you don't, that's fine. You tried it, you figured it out. You don't like it, but if you do, continue. And I wanted to just have that representation for people out there who might hold themselves back from trying something new because they don't see themselves in the thing they're wanting to try. It was just important for me to see my big butt up on there
Hmm.
on the rocks and trying to inspire other people who may look like me, my skin color, my size, whatever the case may be, to know that they can do it too. And again, I'm imperfect, so I don't send everything. I don't always climb to the top, but I'm up here doing it, so can you.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so incredibly important. And while I am a white woman, I'm a larger white woman.
Yes.
And I have been in a lot of spaces where I'm not super physically active, and so I don't feel like I can
Right.
do that. And the fear as a fat woman of being on a wall and falling in front of a bunch of skinny athletic people is very real.
Yes,
It's
yes,
incredible to watch you do that, watch you get up, brush yourself off, and laugh, because it's still a joyful experience. You're still
yes,
coming in with that attitude of learning and growth. It's unbelievable to see that on social media. I think it's becoming more common now as people are sharing more of those pieces of their journey. But I think you and I are about the same age, and we saw a lot of very perfected versions, Instagram versions of people.
yes,
It's so damaging. And so being able to see someone who doesn't look like the stereotypical person doing this activity, doing it with joy, is so much fun to watch and so incredible. And I'm just going to talk for the next 45 minutes about how amazing you are.
thank you. Thank you.
To come back to when you were talking about the transformation and some of the ways that you've grown in this journey, you mentioned something that I know I related really hard to, and I'm sure a lot of the people listening related really hard to, which is the idea of feeling your feelings and finding a way to create a space where you can experience whatever that is. I know I personally have spent a lot of time realizing I was not feeling my feelings. Because here's the thing that I didn't know: you can't just think them. When they say feel your feelings, they physically mean in your body.
Yes.
One of the things that I've done to sort of change my own mindset about that is putting feelings instead of this bad or good category into a by feeling it
Hmm.
that isn't in and of itself a success,
Yes.
because some of the things that you referenced are also things that I've experienced. So I think it's so incredible that you are referencing specifically the idea of feeling those feelings, and how something like that comes to fruition in finding a space like climbing and doing something sort of that physical. So I know I put a lot of things in there, but could you speak a bit about kind of how feeling your feelings was a journey for you,
Mhm.
how you kind of got to that point, and how things like learning to climb and other ways of experiencing that has been helpful, and what you've sort of learned from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that millennials, because I'm a millennial,
Mhm.
have just a generation of parents who weren't allowed to feel their feelings because they felt like, okay, if you're provided for and you have the basics, food, shelter,
Mm-hmm.
clothing, that you shouldn't feel sad about anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so what happened, in my childhood is a lot. And this is why I sort of retreat to my own little corner as an adult, is that whenever I would feel sad about something or feel mad about something, or I was feeling some strong feelings, I would have to sort of deal with that on my own, because I don't think my mother had
Mm-hmm.
the tools to be able to coach me how to work through that, in the same way that she didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
tools to coach herself through that. And so I had to sort of learn that on my own. And I learned that through when I went through my depressive episode in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
where I just completely shut off because I was feeling
Mm-hmm.
so many things at once that I stopped caring about
Mm-hmm.
everything. And once I was able to pull myself up, grab whatever pieces of light I could and hang on to those and amplify those. Once I was able to do that, I was like, okay, I can't continue to do that, because it's almost like a pressure cooker, right? Like if you keep trying
Mm-hmm.
to put things in and keep stuffing them down over and over and over again, right? You're quite literally one day going to cry over spilled milk. And it's not the spilled
Mm-hmm.
milk that's making you upset, or maybe you're kind of upset about the spilled milk, but it's the vast majority of other things that you didn't allow yourself to feel that are coming out sort of once this milk
Mm-hmm.
is spilled, because it has nowhere else to go but out. Like if you keep trying to push it down, you let it fester, it's going to come out in one way, shape, or form, and very often in the most inopportune times.
Yep.
So, so that's kind of, I wanted to make that change in myself and sort of reparent myself in that way, because I didn't want to live like that. I don't want to continuously push my emotions down, because I see
Mm-hmm.
what this does to me. So now I need to find ways to healthily navigate my own emotions. First, name my emotion, right? So if I'm feeling a
Mm-hmm.
thing and I can't quite put my finger on it, I sit with it for a minute and go, oh, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? I'm feeling sad because of boom, boom, and boom. Okay. So now that I'm feeling sad or whatever, I'm gonna allow my mind, myself, my body to process
Mm-hmm.
that emotion and give it enough time to do that. And then after that, what am I gonna do about it? Because I can't sit here and wallow in sadness. If I can make a change to my situation that's going to be better for me, I'm going to do that. Or if the thing that is making me sad is out of my control, and also I can't control everything. That's another
Yeah.
thing. If it's out of my control, right? So I have to relinquish the thought of me having to control everything, because that's safety, right? Once I
Mm-hmm.
relinquish that, okay, how am I going to police myself in that
Mm-hmm.
space if I can't control the things around me? How am I going to react? Well, first, I have to name what I'm feeling, speak to how I'm feeling, and then find a healthy way, be it through journaling, be it through, I love to just write things down so it has a place to
Mm-hmm.
go. I think of like a string from my brain to my hand, of just letting
Mm.
kind of things flow. And so one of the things that I've taken up recently is I write love letters to myself. So I have a notebook specifically that says love letters. And what I do in that is I talk to myself in the way that I would speak to others, in the way that I
Mm.
would have wanted someone to speak to me when I was a child. And so, in that way, I'm sort of healing my inner child and stopping the behavior of speaking so negatively to and
Uh-huh.
about myself just because I am imperfect. I feel like one of my things that I immediately think of when I start to go into that negative speak is the way that you're talking about yourself the way that you would
Mm-hmm.
speak to someone else. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
not, you need to stop and you need to turn around and shift how you're speaking to yourself into a way that's loving and the way that you would speak to someone else. So I always start every letter the same. Hey baby, how are you? And
Mm.
I just keep writing and I let it flow. So the first few pages are like tear stained because it's a form of healing. But what I found is it helps me to just navigate any situation now, because I've started the habit of speaking to myself in such a loving and affirmative and gentle way, and allowing myself to be present with myself, and speaking to myself in a way that I've always wanted to be spoken to. I've always wanted to be given that grace in the same way that I give others grace, because that's always what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a way of like returning to myself, filling my cup up so that I can also fill up other people's cups.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I related pretty hard to a lot of that. What an amazing practice to be putting into writing those love letters to yourself and creating that space. One of the things you mentioned in that was the idea of this pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea that I think as a society, when we look at somebody who's struggling or in a negative space, we have this, it's almost that toxic positivity culture
Oh
of
my
like,
gosh, yes.
let's be happy. Everything should be good. Like, one of the things that I think is a pretty classic millennial trait as well is the idea that our parents were like, we just want our kids to be happy. It's like, okay, sometimes I might be sad and I don't want to have failed you because today I was sad.
Right,
One of
yes.
the things that I say a lot is I'm fine until I'm not. That is
Mm-hmm.
a very past Lillian
Yes.
trait. I could be productive. I would push it down. I would focus on the positive. I would only want to be feeling the positive, good things. Bad things would happen. I would not process that. I would not deal with that because that's not a fun space to be in.
Right.
And that pressure cooker would start building up. And then you don't get to pick when that release happens.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
It happens when it feels like it. Similar to you kind of talking about your breaking point in 2016, I had one in 2020. I just fully shut down.
Yep.
And it was really, really scary to, as someone who did not, who A, like you were saying, desires control, and
Mm-hmm.
B, doesn't feel my feelings and focuses on the positive things. I remember I called my little brother at one point during that and was like, couldn't handle this. And he's had panic attacks before. I kind of thought that's what was happening. So I called him and I was like sobbing on the phone about how out of control I felt and telling him while I was doing that I'm okay. And he goes, hey, it's actually fine if you're not okay.
Yep.
It was one of those moments of clarity that sometimes you need someone else to provide for you, of like,
Yes.
oh, I feel the need to be okay so intensely that I'm fracturing
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still trying to take care of the people who just want to be able to show up for me.
Right.
It's so lovely and wonderful that you have the perspective and compassion to be able to see that the ways that you were taught how to do that were from people who also weren't given those tools to be able to address that. I can definitely see that in my own life as well. And I think that it's part of that sort of societal conversation. My understanding as someone outside of this community is that that is something that is compounded within the Black community, given some of the additional layers of trauma. Is that something that you feel like is true?
Oh my gosh, 100,000%. Oh my gosh, 100,000%. Absolutely. It is definitely compounded within the Black community just because of our just generational trauma. And I think within sort of like Western culture, we don't really appreciate how things are connected, because we focus so much on the individual and me, my, I, right? Whatever is within our
Yeah.
blinders is what matters, and not understanding how everything else is connected to one another. And so this definitely has ties to just the generational trauma from generation to generation within the Black community, because, we're taught to suck it up, whatever, we've survived worse, so your feelings today, at least you didn't have to go through this, or at least you didn't have to go through that. Well, yes, I didn't have to. I'm not a slave. I didn't have to, survive the Jim Crow era. Obviously, those things are awful, terrible things that happen within this country. But it doesn't negate the fact that I'm still feeling the thing that I'm feeling today, right? I had to reshape my mindset, because it was like, because worse things have happened or are happening, you are not allowed to feel how you feel currently about your seemingly small thing. And so I had to teach myself, even though this may seemingly be a small thing, I still have the space and the right and the room to feel it, provided that I'm not harming myself or others in the process of feeling it. And so that has direct ties to just a survivalist sort of mindset within the Black community, because if we stop to feel things that aren't related to our direct survival as a community, that takes away from the journey of
Mm-hmm.
survival and trying to navigate a country that is just not here for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so trying to navigate the two with compassion has been pretty difficult, because I try to acknowledge a lot of things, but also still give myself the space and the room to be able to grow myself, because even though I'm a part of this beautiful, amazing, illustrious community of Black
Mm-hmm.
people, I am still Mariah, and I still
Mm-hmm.
have to navigate myself within the entire group space. So that's definitely connected.
That's, again, I think you're doing it incredibly.
Thank you.
It's so incredible to kind of talk to you through this and to hear all of the ways, like I said, you're kind of addressing this with compassion and being able to see all those sides, but using that compassion for yourself, I think, is a thing that we're not often taught to do. And so doing that with a lot of intention is
Mhm.
really incredible. And I think utilizing that and utilizing the skills that you've talked about with some of these other things to make those incremental changes even within your own attitude about stuff is
Mhm.
really important and really special to see someone doing that, and then to see you celebrating all of that with the way that you approach these things with this vulnerability and joy
Mhm.
on all of your channels is so incredible. So I could talk to you for another 7 to 8 hours about this. I have a few other specific kind of climbing things to come back to. One of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about, one of the things that I think is really related to this, but is also related to climbing and is a specific quote from your one of your
Oh
videos
Lord, what
is,
did I say?
oh no, it's so good. The send is what I say it
Oh,
is.
the send is what I say it is.
Yes. So I want to hear a little bit about kind of where that attitude comes from and what that means to you in climbing and potentially other things.
Yeah, we rules are rules for a reason. Like, I get it. So in the climbing community, the idea is that any sort of like route, you will see two pieces of tape on one or a couple of rocks, and then you'll either see no tape on the top one or tape on the top one. Wherever the tape is where you need to begin both hands or end both hands. And so for me, if I make it to the top and both my hands are up there, the send is what I say it is, and I sent that, right? So that's me sort of taking that power and saying that even though by the like rules of the climbing community, I technically didn't send that. I send that. I send it. So the send is what I say it is. And if my pinky reaches the top of that boulder, I sent it. And that's a win for me. It doesn't have to be a win for you. And that's fine. You may have different rules and a different way that you police yourself. But as for me in my house, I sent that. And I did a damn good job doing it. And that's another way for me to pump myself up, but also pump other people up. Because what I find also is that when you're filling yourself up and like intentionally filling yourself up with all this good stuff and you are shining, you only shine onto other people, right? You only fill other
Mm-hmm.
people's cups up. So I just want people to know that, the send is what you say it is. If you made it halfway up, and you said that's a sin, baby, I'm not going to question it. You said that's a sin. That's fine with me, because I have a different definition of what that looks like. Maybe in the climbing community, or if you are like a professional climber and you're doing this in the Olympics, it's much
Mm-hmm.
different. But we're here to have fun, and in fun, there are like safety rules, but we're here to have fun and here to hang out. It's a really joyous like experience, and so the send is what I say it is. And if I say that
Yeah.
me touching my pinky to the top is a sin, then that's what it is. You're not going to tell me otherwise. Same thing if you said the sin is you stepping 2 feet on the first block. That's your sin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to question it because it's your journey. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that was just me being like funny at first when I first said it, but then I listen back to it. I was like, oh, I may have started a
Yeah.
thing here with myself.
You're gonna see that as a quote on my Instagram with this podcast that's going up. I'm gonna tag you in it, and then it's gonna go everywhere because I love that. I love the idea of the successes. You get to decide what that is. You get to decide how much you're gonna do today and what is the victory. And that's so incredible. And I think one of the things sort of semi-related to that you also talked about in the video is addressing kind of how do you look at that fear? Because climbing is scary. So how do you get and as somebody who is fully terrified of heights, climbing is probably not going to be my thing. But
That's
I
okay.
also
That's
know
okay.
that there's ways to make that, to kind of get over that hurdle of that fear of I'm going to fall. I'm potentially going to hurt myself. Being on the wall and not feeling like you have a good grip. Like, how do you kind of address that?
The thing is, the fear just never goes away. It will never ever leave you. And so one thing that I had to learn about myself is that I have to be one with the fear of falling, right? So I have to, and here's another behavior term, systematically desensitize myself to that fear, whatever it is, right? So the only way that I'm going to do that is just repeatedly exposing myself to that fear so that I get to know it, get to know what it feels like, and I'm in tune with my body. So if I'm feeling fearful, where in my body am I feeling it, and being conscious of that and still doing the thing despite the fact that I'm feeling this fear. Because the truth is that it never goes away. I'm always scared of falling off the thing, whether it be embarrassment or getting hurt or whatever the case may be. And so just becoming one with that fear, okay? I am scared of climbing on this because the rock is shaped this way, and I know one slip, I'm going to fall on my butt in front of everybody, and I'm going to be embarrassed. But you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And if I fall, I fall. The ABA term is systematic desensitization. The idea of that is kind of has roots in shaping. So, things that I've done with clients before, if they fear certain things, is having them starting from like the roots of it, having just the thing or the object in their vicinity, not anywhere near them, just in the vicinity so that they know it's there, they see that it's there, and then having them moving the thing closer, and then having them touch the thing, and then having them interact with the thing just over time. So systematically desensitizing them to that object or the thing or whatever the case may be. And so it's kind of like the same thing with fear. Like, I'm gonna feel it regardless because that feeling just never goes away. So it's best that I just desensitize myself to the feeling and just do the thing anyway, because I'm gonna be fearful regardless.
Yeah, I think that's spooky for me, but probably would actually help with my fear of heights. But for people who are listening to this going, we're going to talk about two different things, but people who are listening to this going, I want to get into climbing. How would you recommend someone who's like brand new to this, looking to kind of figure out how to do climbing? How do you recommend they go about trying to figure that out?
Yeah, absolutely. So one way that I would recommend is to find just your local climbing gym. Gyms will typically they have the rainbow system as far as difficulty for each climb. And then they also have grades. So like a V0, a V1, a V2, and it goes up from there. So I would recommend a person just going and trying it. Go to your local gym, getting up on those rocks to see how you feel about it. I would also recommend going with friends if they can, or meeting people at the gym. Because I found that for me, when I'm going, I'm with a few of my friends, and it's always kind of like a social gathering. We'll get some food from the restaurant, afterwards. And that always reinforces the fact that we were just tearing our butts up climbing. So that's one thing. I am also, for the people out there who are like researchers, watching YouTube videos about beginner climbing tips from people. There's a ton of videos on TikToks of beginner climber tips and things like that. And then I also want to speak to the type of climbing that I'm doing too. So there are a couple different types. What I'm doing is called bouldering. So that means that I am not doing it with any type of ropes or harnesses or anything like that.
Mm.
And then the other type of climbing is just regular rock climbing where you have a harness and you go up a little bit higher. So they'll make the route easier since you're going up higher. But there's also the safety and security that you have like a harness and a person at the bottom who's holding you just in case you were to fall, you're not going to fall far or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
kind of exploring which kind of one you want to start off doing. Bouldering tends to be at lower heights, but you don't have the safety and security of a harness. Rock climbing tends to be at higher heights, but you have the safety and security of the harness. So just kind of feeling it out and trying it and seeing which one, feels best, to you. Because there's some people who may not care for,
Yeah.
bouldering. There's some people who prefer to climb outside because that's the thing. People climb actual factual rocks outside. So it depends. But I would say if you're a researcher, go ahead and do your research, look at videos, do what you need to do, and then get together with a group of friends if you can. A lot of places offer like first time free or just day passes where you can guys can just make it like a social hour essentially. That way
Yeah.
that first experience of climbing is paired with something positive like friends, like a fun time, like do something after you guys are
Yeah.
climbing, like going out for a beer, doing something fun after it too reinforces the fact that you were just trying something new as well.
Absolutely. And that leads very well into the other thing that I think a lot of people are probably listening and would love some information on how to kind of approach that as well, which is this applied behavioral analysis. Obviously, not everyone's going to go get their master's degree in it.
Yeah.
But if that's something that someone is interested in learning more about and they want to sort of figure out how to take those techniques and adapt it into their own life, do you have any resources or suggestions for ways that people can learn about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one way would be there's a website called Relias Learning. That's RELIAS Learning. And they have a bunch of videos on there just about the basics of applied behavior analysis for people to kind of learn about what the heck it even is, because a lot of people don't know what it is. I sort of myself, I fell into the career after graduating college. I wanted to use my psych degree in something that related to psych. And so I fell into
Yeah.
the field of ABA. So Relias Learning. And then a few other places, I can't name them currently, have videos, tutorials, things like that.
Send them to me in an email and I'll put them in the episode description along with.
Absolutely. Just have
Great.
videos about kind of what it is and then the different principles that you can use. The one that's probably going to be kind of the most prominent to anybody who's a beginner is the idea of positive reinforcement. So essentially that means that you're adding something to the environment that's going to encourage the behavior happening in the future. So like I said earlier, you're trying this new thing and it's new and you don't know what's going to happen, but afterwards you go get your favorite pizza, or afterwards you go do something that you really like, so that you are reinforcing the fact that you tried something new. And so ideally over time you'll want to climb more because you're reinforcing yourself with something that that you like, your tried and true afterwards as well.
That's fantastic. I think there's so many places that is valuable. The last thing, which most people are probably listening to this going, well, I want to follow Mariya forever. I'm going to start a cult around her because she's so amazing. Where is it that people can find more stuff about you and follow along on this journey?
Absolutely. So mostly on my Instagram and my TikTok, it's Mariya Climbs, Mariya Climbs. For both of them, that's where you can mostly find me posting things. I am not always near my phone, but I like to check my messages, once a day to see if anybody has commented or to see if anybody messaged me or anybody reached out. So
Yeah.
I'm also very new at this, so I like to talk to people who are also very new as well, just to encourage them to keep going.
Yeah, let's encourage people to keep going. That's fantastic. I think that's absolutely the attitude of this podcast. I feel like I've said this 1,000 times and I will say it 1,000 more. Thank you, Mariya, so much for coming on today and talking about this thing. I think this really embodies the point of this podcast, which is being really passionate about something and why it matters to care about things. Lots of places you can find more of Care So Much. We'll have a new incredible guest every week that you can listen to them talk about the thing they're passionate about. You can find us across all different socials at Care So Much Pod on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Twitter. They're everywhere. If you are interested in kind of following along and hearing from these other guests, those are great places to find all of that. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and there's something that you care a lot about and you're really passionate about it, and you could talk about it with a lot of enthusiasm for hours and hours on end, and you feel like maybe some people are telling you to stop doing that and you need to be quieter about your joy and your passion, I just want you to know that I care. I care so much,